The day they told me my daughter would never walk again is a day I'll never forget. I was sitting in Dr. Morrison's office, holding little Emma's tiny hand, when he delivered the news that would shatter my world. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice gentle but final. "Emma has a rare form of congenital paralysis. The damage to her spinal cord is extensive and irreversible. She will never have voluntary movement in her lower extremities. She will never walk, never run, never experience the simple joys of childhood that we take for granted." I felt the room spin around me. Emma was only 3 years old, and her entire future had just been erased by a single diagnosis. I looked at my daughter, her innocent face unaware of the tragedy that had just been pronounced upon her, and I felt something break inside me. The drive home was silent. Emma slept in her car seat, peaceful and unaware, while I gripped the steering wheel and tried not to cry. When we got home, I carried her to her room and laid her gently on her bed. I sat beside her for hours, just watching her sleep, trying to come to terms with the reality of our new life. My husband, Robert, found me there as the sun was setting. He didn't say anything. He just sat beside me and held my hand. We sat in silence, two parents mourning the future we would never have. The weeks that followed were a blur of medical appointments, physical therapy sessions, and endless nights spent researching treatments that didn't exist, cures that weren't available, miracles that seemed impossible. I became obsessed with finding answers, with finding hope, with finding anything that might change the trajectory of my daughter's life. But the doctors were unanimous. There was nothing to be done. Emma would spend her entire life unable to move, unable to experience the world the way other children did. I had to accept that reality. I had to learn to live with it. But acceptance felt like betrayal. The first months after Emma's diagnosis were the darkest of my life. I found myself going through the motions of daily life like an automaton, caring for my daughter, managing the household, but feeling nothing. The joy had been drained from everything. What was the point of cooking a nice meal when we were all grieving? What was the point of decorating for holidays when there was nothing to celebrate? Robert tried to help, tried to be supportive, but I could see the pain in his eyes too. We were both drowning, and we couldn't seem to reach each other. Emma, bless her, remained oblivious to our despair. She was a happy child, despite her condition. She laughed. She played with her toys. She loved her parents with an unconditional love that made my heart ache. Sometimes I would watch her playing, and I would think about all the things she would never do. She would never ride a bicycle. She would never dance at her prom. She would never run to greet a loved one. She would never experience the freedom of movement that we all took for granted. The guilt was overwhelming. I felt guilty for being sad. I felt guilty for not being able to fix her. I felt guilty for sometimes wishing that things were different, that she was different, that our lives were different. I knew it was wrong to feel that way, but I couldn't help it. The therapist I started seeing told me that these feelings were normal, that grief was a process, that I would eventually find acceptance. But acceptance felt like giving up. It felt like admitting defeat. It felt like betraying my daughter by accepting that she would never walk, never run, never experience the full spectrum of human experience. One day, about 6 months after the diagnosis, Robert came home with a surprise. He had been to the animal shelter, and he had brought home a dog, a rescue dog, a mixed breed with a golden and brown coat, and the saddest eyes I had ever seen. "I thought," Robert said hesitantly, "that maybe Emma would benefit from having a companion. Someone who loves unconditionally, who doesn't judge, who just accepts her as she is." I wanted to be angry. I wanted to tell him that a dog couldn't fix our problems, that it was a waste of time and money. But when I looked at Emma's face light up at the sight of the dog, when I saw her reach out to touch its fur, I understood what Robert was trying to do. He was trying to give our daughter something to love, something that would love her back, without reservation. We named the dog Bella. Bella was a beautiful dog. Despite her rough appearance, she was clearly a rescue, with scars on her body that told stories of a difficult past. but her eyes were kind and her temperament was gentle. From the moment she arrived, she seemed to understand that Emma was special, that she needed extra care and attention. Bella would lie beside Emma's bed for hours, her head resting on the mattress, just watching her. She would follow me from room to room, as if she was trying to understand the dynamics of our household. She seemed to sense our sadness, our grief, and she responded with a quiet, steady presence that was somehow comforting. Emma loved Bella immediately. She would reach out and touch the dog's fur, and Bella would remain perfectly still, allowing the child to pet her however she wanted. It was beautiful to watch, this connection between a paralyzed child and a rescue dog. For the first time in months, I saw Emma smile a genuine smile, not the forced smile she gave to adults who pitied her, but a real, joyful smile. Robert was right. Bella was exactly what our family needed. As the weeks passed, Bella became an integral part of our lives. She slept in Emma's room. She ate with us. She became as much a part of our family as any of us. And something remarkable began to happen. Emma seemed happier. She seemed more engaged with the world. She would talk to Bella, tell her stories, share her thoughts and feelings with the dog in a way she didn't with anyone else. I would stand in the doorway of her room and watch them together, and I would feel a strange sense of peace. Maybe, I thought, this was enough. Maybe having a loving companion was enough to make a life worth living, even if that life was limited by paralysis. I didn't know then that Bella would give us something far more valuable than companionship. I didn't know that this dog would change everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Emma had been napping, and I needed to get her medication from the kitchen. It was just 2 minutes, I thought. Just 2 minutes to grab the bottle and come back. I left Bella in the room with Emma, not thinking anything of it. Bella had been with us for 3 months by then, and she was as gentle and trustworthy as they came. I was in the kitchen searching through the cabinet for the medication when I heard a sound from Emma's room. It wasn't a cry or a scream, just a soft sound, almost like a gasp. My maternal instinct kicked in immediately. I dropped everything and ran back to her room. What I saw when I opened the door stopped me dead in my tracks. Bella was standing on her hind legs, her front paws resting on the edge of Emma's bed. Her nose was pressed against Emma's arm, and she was making a soft, almost whimpering sound. But it was Emma's response that made my breath catch in my throat. My daughter's arm was moving, not a random twitch or spasm, but a deliberate, responsive movement. Her tiny hand was reaching out toward Bella, her fingers grasping at the dog's fur. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to process what I was seeing. This wasn't possible. The doctors had been clear. Emma would never have voluntary movement, and yet there it was, undeniable and real. Emma's eyes opened, and she looked at me with a smile. "Mama," she said, her voice soft and sleepy. Bella was helping me. I didn't know what she meant. I didn't understand what was happening. All I knew was that my daughter, who was supposed to be completely paralyzed, had just moved her arm. I walked slowly into the room, my legs feeling weak beneath me. Bella looked at me with those intelligent eyes, and I could have sworn she knew exactly what she had just done. I reached out and touched Emma's arm, feeling the warmth of her skin, the reality of what I had just witnessed. My hands were shaking, my heart was pounding, and for the first time since Emma's diagnosis, I felt something I thought I had lost forever: hope. I spent the rest of that day in a daze, watching Emma and Bella together, waiting to see if the movement would happen again. It did, several times. Each time Bella would nudge Emma's arm or leg, my daughter would respond with a small, deliberate movement. It was subtle, barely perceptible, but it was there. I recorded everything on my phone, my hands shaking as I held the camera. I needed proof. I needed evidence that this was real and not just my desperate imagination playing tricks on me. That evening, I showed Robert the videos. He watched them in silence, his expression shifting from skepticism to shock to wonder. "Elena," he said finally, I don't even know what this is. "We need to show this to Dr. Morrison." I knew he was right, but I was terrified. What if the doctor dismissed it as a spasm? What if he said it was just my wishful thinking? What if he told me I was seeing things that weren't there? But I also knew that if there was even the slightest chance that this meant something, that this could lead to something, I had to pursue it. The next morning, I called Dr. Morrison's office and requested an emergency appointment. His secretary seemed skeptical about fitting us in, but when I explained that Emma had shown new movement, she put me through to the doctor immediately. "Bring her in this afternoon," he said, his voice sharp with interest. "And bring the dog." I was shocked. I had expected him to dismiss the idea, but instead he seemed genuinely intrigued. That afternoon, we packed Emma into the car, Bella in the back seat beside her, and drove to the hospital. I had no idea what Dr. Morrison would find, but I knew that something extraordinary was happening. My daughter, who was supposed to be completely paralyzed, was moving, and somehow Bella was the key to unlocking that movement. Dr. Morrison's examination room was cold and sterile, a stark contrast to the warmth of our home. Emma seemed nervous, clinging to Bella as we entered. The doctor greeted us warmly, but I could see the skepticism in his eyes. He had seen the videos, but seeing them in person was different. He began by examining Emma's legs, checking her reflexes, testing her muscle tone. Everything was as it had been before. No voluntary movement, no response to stimulation. Then he asked me to bring Bella closer to the bed. "Let's see what happens," he said. Bella, as if understanding the importance of the moment, approached Emma's bed and gently nudged the child's arm with her nose, and there it was, a clear, unmistakable movement. Emma's arm twitched, then moved deliberately toward Bella. Dr. Morrison's eyes widened. He repeated the test several times, and each time Emma responded. The movement was subtle, but it was definitely there. "This is extraordinary," he said finally, his voice filled with wonder. "I've never seen anything like this. The movement is too consistent, too responsive to be a random spasm. Something is happening here that I don't fully understand." He spent the next hour running tests, checking Emma's vital signs, examining her neurological responses. He brought in other doctors, specialists who looked at Emma with expressions of confusion and amazement. They all agreed. There was movement where there should be none. There was response where there should be none. And somehow, Bella was triggering it. "I want to run some more comprehensive tests," Dr. Morrison said. "I want to understand what's happening here. This could be significant. This could change everything we know about Emma's condition." As we left the hospital that day, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: genuine hope. Not the desperate, grasping hope of someone drowning, but real, solid hope based on evidence, based on what I had seen with my own eyes. My daughter was moving, and somehow Bella was helping her do it. Over the next few weeks, Dr. Morrison conducted a series of tests and scans. He brought in neurologists, specialists in spinal cord injuries, researchers who were fascinated by Emma's case. They all came to the same conclusion: Emma's spinal cord was not as completely damaged as they had originally thought. There were tiny, almost imperceptible areas of nerve function that had been missed in the initial diagnosis. These areas were so small, so subtle, that they hadn't shown up on the standard tests. But Bella, with her heightened senses and intuitive understanding, had detected them. She had been stimulating these areas, triggering responses that no one else had thought to look for. "It's as if the dog knows exactly where to touch," one of the specialists said, shaking his head in amazement. "It's as if she understands the anatomy of the spinal cord and knows exactly which nerves are still functional." Dr. Morrison proposed a surgical procedure to decompress the areas where the nerve function remained. It was a delicate operation, risky, but it offered the possibility of restoring more movement to Emma's limbs. Robert and I didn't hesitate. We signed the consent forms immediately. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. The night before the operation, I sat with Emma in her room, Bella lying beside her on the bed. My daughter was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the surgery that awaited her. I stroked her hair and whispered a prayer, asking for the surgery to be successful, asking for my daughter to have a chance at a fuller life. Bella opened her eyes and looked at me, and I could have sworn she understood. This dog, this rescue dog that Robert had brought home on a whim, had given us something priceless, a second chance. The surgery was successful. Dr. Morrison was able to decompress the affected areas of Emma's spinal cord, opening up the pathways for nerve signals to travel. He told us that the recovery would be slow, that it would take time for Emma's body to relearn how to move, but that there was real potential for significant improvement. For the first time since Emma's diagnosis, I allowed myself to believe that our daughter might have a future that wasn't limited by paralysis. The weeks following Emma's surgery were filled with physical therapy sessions and small victories. At first, the improvements were subtle. Emma could move her toes. Then she could flex her ankles. Then she could move her entire feet. Each small movement was celebrated like a major achievement. Robert and I would cheer, and Emma would laugh, delighted by our enthusiasm. Bella was always there, lying beside Emma during therapy sessions, as if encouraging her to keep trying. The physical therapist, a woman named Margaret, was amazed by Emma's progress. "I've never seen a child recover this quickly," she said. "Usually after a spinal cord injury, the recovery is much slower, but Emma seems to be making remarkable progress." I knew why. It was Bella. My daughter was motivated by her love for the dog, by her desire to be able to play with Bella, to run with her, to experience the world with her. The dog had given Emma a reason to fight, a reason to push through the pain and exhaustion of physical therapy. By the end of the first month, Emma could move her legs deliberately. By the end of the second month, she could sit up with minimal support. By the end of the third month, she was taking her first tentative steps with a walker, Bella, walking beside her, steady and supportive. I watched my daughter take those first steps, and I wept. These were steps that the doctors said would never happen. These were steps that represented a future that had seemed impossible just months before. Emma was walking, my paralyzed daughter was walking, and it was all because of Bella. The bond between Emma and Bella had deepened into something profound. They were inseparable. Emma would talk to Bella about everything, sharing her thoughts and feelings with the dog in a way she didn't with anyone else. And Bella would listen, her intelligent eyes following Emma's every movement, her presence a constant source of comfort and support. I realized that Bella hadn't just helped Emma physically. She had helped her emotionally, spiritually, in ways that went far beyond the physical therapy. She had given Emma hope, purpose, and unconditional love. 6 months after the surgery, Emma was walking independently. Not perfectly, not without effort, but she was walking. She was running, albeit slowly. She was playing with other children, laughing, experiencing the joys of childhood that we had thought were lost to her forever. The doctors were astounded. They published papers about Emma's case, about the remarkable recovery that had seemed impossible. They interviewed us, asking how we explained the extraordinary progress. I always gave them the same answer. It was Bella. Our dog knew something was wrong, and she knew how to help. Some of the doctors seemed skeptical of this explanation. They wanted to attribute Emma's recovery to the surgery, to the physical therapy, to her own determination. But I knew the truth. Without Bella's initial detection of the residual nerve function, without her consistent stimulation of those nerves, without her unwavering support and love, Emma would still be paralyzed. Bella had been the catalyst for everything. One day, about a year after Emma's diagnosis, I was sitting in the park with my daughter and my dog. Emma was playing on the grass, running and laughing. Her movements still not perfect, but so much better than anyone had thought possible. Bella was running beside her, keeping pace, making sure she didn't fall. I watched them together, and I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for Bella, for her intuition and her love. Gratitude for Robert, for bringing her home. Gratitude for Dr. Morrison, for being willing to investigate the unconventional, gratitude for Emma, for her strength and her determination, and gratitude for the miracle that had unfolded in our lives. I thought about all the families out there who were facing similar diagnoses, similar despair. I thought about how many of them might benefit from the kind of animal-assisted therapy that Bella had provided for Emma. I decided that I wanted to share our story to help other families understand the incredible potential of animals to heal, to help, to transform lives. I started a foundation dedicated to animal-assisted therapy for children with spinal cord injuries. I worked with Dr. Morrison to develop protocols for using dogs to detect and stimulate residual nerve function in paralyzed children. I became an advocate for the incredible healing power of animals, and it all started with a rescue dog and a moment of panic when I left the room for just 2 minutes. The response to our story was overwhelming. Families from all over the world reached out to us, sharing their own stories of animals helping them through impossible situations. Some had dogs that had detected health problems before the doctors did. Some had cats that had provided emotional support during times of crisis. Some had horses that had helped children with disabilities learn to walk again. Each story was unique, but they all had one thing in common: the incredible, inexplicable ability of animals to sense when someone needed help and to provide that help in ways that science couldn't fully explain. I started giving talks at hospitals and medical conferences, sharing Emma's story and advocating for the integration of animal-assisted therapy into standard medical treatment. Some doctors were skeptical, but others were intrigued. A few hospitals began implementing animal-assisted therapy programs, and the results were remarkable. Children who had been told they would never walk again were walking. Children who had been depressed and withdrawn were becoming engaged and hopeful. Animals were healing in ways that medicine alone could not. Dr. Morrison became one of my strongest advocates. He published a comprehensive study on animal-assisted therapy for spinal cord injuries, citing Emma's case as a prime example of the potential of this approach. The study was published in a prestigious medical journal and generated significant interest in the medical community. Universities began offering courses on animal-assisted therapy. Research centers were established to study the mechanisms by which animals could detect and help with medical conditions. And it all started with Bella, a rescue dog with kind eyes and an inexplicable ability to sense what her human needed. Emma, now 5 years old, was thriving. She was in regular school, playing with her friends, living a life that had seemed impossible just 2 years before. She still had some limitations, some residual effects of her spinal cord injury, but she was living a full, joyful life, and Bella was always by her side, her constant companion, her guardian angel in the form of a dog. I often thought about what would have happened if Robert hadn't brought Bella home. What if he had listened to my initial resistance? What if he had decided that a dog wasn't the right solution? Emma would still be paralyzed. She would still be living a life of limitation and despair. But because Robert had the courage to try something unconventional, because he had the faith to believe that a rescue dog could help, everything changed. Our family was given a second chance. Emma was given a future, and Bella was given a home, a family, and the opportunity to use her extraordinary gifts to help someone she loved. As I reflect on our journey, I am struck by the profound mystery of what happened. Science can explain some of it: the surgery, the physical therapy, Emma's own determination and strength. These all played a role in her recovery. But there is something that science cannot fully explain: Bella's ability to detect the residual nerve function, her instinct to stimulate those nerves, her unwavering commitment to helping Emma. It is as if Bella understood, on some level beyond human comprehension, that Emma needed help and that she, Bella, was the one who could provide it. I've come to believe that animals possess a kind of intuition, a sixth sense that allows them to perceive things that humans cannot. They can sense illness. They can detect emotional distress. They can understand when someone needs help. And they respond with a kind of unconditional love and commitment that is truly remarkable. Bella didn't help Emma because she expected a reward. She didn't help because she was trained to do so. She helped because she loved Emma, because she sensed that Emma needed her, because it was in her nature to care for those who were vulnerable. This is the kind of love that we should all aspire to. This is the kind of compassion that could transform the world if we all possessed it. Emma and Bella's bond is something special. They are inseparable, connected by something deeper than words can express. Emma talks to Bella about everything, and Bella listens with an attention and understanding that is almost human. When Emma is sad, Bella is there to comfort her. When Emma is happy, Bella celebrates with her. They have a relationship that transcends the typical human-animal bond. They are soulmates, connected by the extraordinary circumstances of their meeting and the miracle of Emma's recovery. I often wonder what would have happened if I had been in the room when Bella did whatever she did that day. Would I have stopped her? Would I have been afraid that she was hurting Emma? Would I have missed the opportunity for Emma to experience that crucial moment of movement? I'm grateful that I wasn't there, grateful that I left the room for just 2 minutes, grateful that Bella had the opportunity to work her magic without my interference. Sometimes I think the best thing we can do is step back and allow miracles to happen. Today, Emma is 7 years old. She is a healthy, happy, active child who loves to run and play and laugh. She still has some residual effects from her spinal cord injury, some slight weakness in her legs, some occasional pain. But these are minor inconveniences compared to the paralysis that was supposed to define her life. She goes to school, she has friends, she participates in activities that she loves. She is living a full, joyful life. Bella is still by her side, her constant companion, her best friend. The two of them are inseparable. They play together, they sleep together, they share a bond that is truly special. Bella is getting older now, her muzzle turning grey, her movements a bit slower, but her love for Emma is as strong as ever, and Emma's love for Bella is equally profound. I often think about the moment that changed everything, the moment I left the room for just 2 minutes and came back to find my daughter moving. That moment was the turning point in our lives. That moment gave us back our future. That moment proved that miracles do happen, that love is more powerful than any diagnosis, that animals possess gifts that we are only beginning to understand. I've dedicated my life to sharing this message, to helping other families understand the incredible potential of animals to heal and transform lives. I have worked with hospitals and medical centers to implement animal-assisted therapy programs. I have spoken at conferences and universities about the power of animal intuition. I have written articles and given interviews, always with the goal of helping others understand what Bella taught us. But the most important thing I have learned is this. Sometimes the greatest miracles come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the answer to our prayers comes in the form of a rescue dog with kind eyes and an inexplicable ability to sense what we need. Sometimes all we have to do is open our hearts, take a chance on something unconventional, and allow love to work its magic. Emma and Bella have taught me that life is precious, that hope is always possible, and that the bonds we form with the animals we love can be just as profound and transformative as any human relationship. I am grateful every day for the miracle that Bella brought into our lives. I am grateful for the second chance that my daughter was given, and I am grateful for the opportunity to share this story with the world, in the hope that it might inspire others to believe in miracles, to trust in the power of love, and to open their hearts to the extraordinary gifts that animals can bring into our lives.